hello, and welcome to another edition of Talent Talks. I think Talent Talks is really going to stick, right? It fits everything. We can talk about the technology associated with talent, trends, vendors, a variety of different things. And I am so lucky to be here today to talk about two of those things, right? We have our great vendor partner, Adzuna, on the line with us today. Iain, would you mind taking just a second and introducing yourself to the viewers?
Sure. Hi, I'm Iain Moss. I'm a B2B Marketing Manager here at Adzuna. I've been with the company for about 4 years now, and yeah, really excited to be involved in this conversation.
Excellent. And I have been very fortunate in preparing for this episode. I actually took a few minutes and read your blog, so I'm going to have some questions about some of the great information that you share there. It's a real good, pithy example of how to get information that is actionable. So I'm going to love to talk about that. And for all of the viewers out there, Adzuna blog, definitely read. And one of my favorite new friends from Joveo, we have my buddy Dan from Publishing on the line. Dan, would you like to give a little bit of an overview of what you do for Joveo and your role here?
Sure, absolutely. So, hey everyone, Dan Sapir from Joveo. I've been in the space for about 10 years. I've worked for Indeed, I've worked for Simply Hired, and I work for Restoration Media. Here at Joveo, I manage our publisher network. So companies like Adzuna, and making sure that we optimize the relationship that we have with them so that our clients see the best possible return on investment through the likes of Adzuna. And beyond that, I work on business development efforts. So really anything that makes Joveo money that's not sales.
And I love that. Like, that's actually how Dan introduced himself to me. Like, you can call me about anything that makes money but sales. I thought, well, that's a really good example. I also, and the other thing is, I also asked Dan, like from the very first time I met him, if that was a Zoom background behind him, because those sort of brick walls don't exist in most houses. So he has a thumbs up on the background today. So thank you both for being here. And, so we have about 15-20 minutes to really talk about talent acquisition and recruitment marketing and how you each kind of have a piece in that. I want to start off the conversation with something that's really timely, the COVID-19, right? So one of the things, Iain, that I recognized on the blog was that you guys have some really good actionable information about trends related to COVID-19. Would you mind telling the viewers a little bit about that?
Sure. So one of the things Adzuna prides itself on is having a huge array of data about vacancies. So we sort of work with so many people. So we have, and we do all the kind of vacancies we've got. So we have more vacancies than most of our sort of competitors in terms of what we can see. So that means that we have a really good insight into what's going on across all the countries we work in, which is 16 countries. So some of the things we're able to see in terms of vacancy numbers and across categories point out that, things like the UK is probably doing the worst of all the countries in terms of the number of vacancies it's lost and as a percentage term. The US is starting to kind of begin its recovery, though it's had a slight stutter this week. And countries like France and Germany are coming back to normality, really. They're very close to what they were pre-COVID. So this is the kind of data we're able to see. And obviously then we're able to sort of slice and dice that a little bit to see what it's like via different categories. So we're able to see what's going on in hospitality and catering, which, is certainly here in the UK is struggling a lot because no one's hiring because, well, the bars and pubs and restaurants are all shut, though they're beginning to reopen. So we were starting to take a look to see what was going to happen with regards to vacancies there. So that's kind of an overview of what we've got.
It was super interesting. And so as some of the countries are starting to warm up, how are you seeing the post-COVID sort of, I'm going to call it a warm reopening. I don't want to call it soft, or, you know what I mean, but sort of a warm reopening. How are you seeing the cost per click to apply ratios, cost, like some of those things that are a little more core to your business? How are you seeing those impacted?
Well, I think, overall there's been, a bit of a decline, but it's actually been a bit of a split. So because in the UK we have the furlough scheme, we have what the government call the job retention scheme. It means that people don't have to sort of apply for jobs because their salaries are being paid. So it means actually a lot of people are quite happy not to apply. So whereas under normal circumstances, if you saw a huge increase in unemployment, you'd expect there to be the cost per click to go way down because loads of candidates are applying, they're finding things free, and things are just dropping. We're not seeing that quite so much. It's a little bit down, but as we start to pull out of this, things are, it's still early to tell, because here in the UK, it's July the 4th is the day that things start to kind of reopen. So that's when a lot of the economy is going to start reopening. Pubs and restaurants and things like that will start to reopen. We're not quite seeing these things creep up just yet, but it's beginning.
Yeah, that's really interesting, right? Because just the common nature reply to that would be sort of like that, but you would think that there would be a real deluge of candidates, but it's really interesting to know how that impacts that. Now, Dan, I'm going to flip it over to you for a question. So, employers rely on a variety of channels, right? And job boards, Google Ads, those sorts of things. Can you sort of give an overview of how each of those are, what part do each of those play in our, I guess, our architecture?
Sure, absolutely. So, we rely on a bunch of different channels, right? We do distribution to traditional pay-per-post channels, pay for performance, and then, of course, social channels like Google and Facebook. We typically see that the most savvy companies, at least in the United States, and in international markets, it's a bit different. But in the US, we typically see companies focused primarily on pay-for-performance sites. So we'll help optimize across a network of hundreds of different pay-performance sites. And then when people don't have enough reach, that's when they start kind of moving towards Google and Facebook, right? They have phenomenal targeting, but the reality is it can be a little more expensive to get to those users. So most companies are kind of starting with the pay-performance sites.
Now that makes sense. And Iain, you have an interesting perspective from more of a UK perspective. Do you see it the same, or is it a little bit different?
Yeah, I think employers are a bit less kind of savvy than I think they are in the US. I think that kind of your point is true. I mean, certainly the adoption of programmatic in the UK is well behind where it is in the US, but we're starting to see, I think, things start to pick up a little bit on that side of things, because people are starting to realize the benefits of programmatic solutions, and the fact that, the obvious things that you can bid on job level data, and you can start to, actually measure and track things a lot more. So I think employers generally have been a bit reluctant to kind of get into the nitty gritty of how they're attracting people, but we're seeing more people being employed at the big employers to be kind of recruitment advertising specialists. So talking about which job boards they work with, which programmatic agencies they work with, and which advertising platforms they use.
It's really interesting. In all of my years at AT&T, right? Like, I was never an HR person. That wasn't like my shtick. I came in as a marketer, and I did some HR work. I actually came in more as a salesperson, and then did some marketing work, and then some HR work. And I think that your point is really poignant, in that traditional HR folks may not have yet seen the value of programmatic advertising and ad networks like Adzuna. If you were to give your 2-minute spiel on why is this the better way to go, right? What would you say to an employer that maybe hasn't gone down this path? Iain, I'll start with you.
Well, what I would say is that by going down this kind of cost per click, cost per application methodology, however you do it, whether it's programmatic or whether you do it manually or on your own back through advertising channels, the advantage is that you're able to track and attract these things well, and test things and try stuff. What we sort of find with a lot of pay and pray and long-term contracts is that it doesn't suit every type of business. It doesn't allow you to be flexible, to flex up and down based on your business requirements. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of business out there who, when COVID hits, suddenly were looking at their cost base and things that they'd already spent money on and going, was this the right thing to do? So what it allows you to do is that flexibility. It allows you to really sort of target the right kinds of people and learn what works. I think that's the key thing, is learning what works and being able to, because it doesn't mean that, one supplier is the sort of golden egg for everything you do. It means that you can sort of spread your money across lots of suppliers, find the combination that works for you. Some jobs it's going to be different. Some jobs it's going to be, you know, a certain combination of things. You know, for example, how you attract an accountant is going to be completely different to how you attract a salesperson, to how you attract someone who works in warehousing. They're not all living in the same place. So being able to work those things out for yourselves through your kind of the suppliers that you use, it makes a lot more sense overall, and you can probably drive your costs down and ultimately drive your time to hire down as well.
And your quality up, right? Like, so it's no secret, like, and you may not know this, but one of the reasons that I decided to consult and act as a brand evangelist for Joveo is that I am super bullish on programmatic. I worked at AT&T and I purchased outrageously large duration-based posting packages for a significant part of my career. And then it sort of shifted, right? Like things started to be more over the top and we didn't need to hire guys to climb poles anymore. And so it really sort of made sense to shift to more of a on-demand sort of advertising and to shift my money out of those duration-based into more of a programmatic side. So Dan, I'm going to throw it to you, right? Like, because I think I'm the perfect use case, right? Like I was spending a ton of money with the traditional guys. I needed to lower my costs. I needed to be more flexible. Are there other reasons that you see employers in the US or other places, like what are sort of the catalysts that are getting them away from the traditional job postings, or solely traditionally the job postings? Because let's be real, I still bought some job postings, right? But what do we do to what are we doing to sort of pivot that?
And to be clear, it's not like every single paper post is a flop, right? There's plenty of paper post sites out there, certain verticals that just still crush it for employers. So it's not one or the other. It's just important to measure everything, right? And I actually think back to like before I got into the space. I know you're an AT&T person. I worked for Verizon in advertising, right? And you know, when I talked to the recruiter at Indeed, which was my first job in the space, he sold me because he was like, oh, everyone else sells pay-per-post and we sell pay-per-click. I jumped at that saying it's like shooting fish in a barrel, right? But when I first started talking to HR professionals, they seemed a bit terrified of it. What if I wake up in the morning and spent $1 million? And, you know, some questions around something that's just a new technology, right? And I think that the market has just started to really adopt pay per performance. I know it's been around for a while, but, you know, I think at this point, you know, Indeed's done such a good job of evangelizing it that people are like, okay, well, Indeed works really well. But when you start thinking about pay for performance overall, there's thousands of different sites you could post on, and that becomes a little terrifying. So what I love about programmatic, and what I think is kind of the catalyst here, is that people say, you know, especially in the current times, people are like, well, my CFO is telling me I got to do more with less. You know, people have uncertain budgets. You know, people are on furloughs. They don't know if what their budget today is going to be their budget tomorrow. And they're saying, well, I still got to make these hires. And how do I do that, right? And that's where programmatic can really come in and say, you know what, just give all your budget kind of to here, and let, you know, some manual oversight to an automated process decide what's going to be the best ROI for you. So it gets people into that pay performance space in a very smart way that's low touch. And that's what I really think is helping kind of become a catalyst for programmatic adoption.
Yeah, it feels like jumping into the deep end with a life vest, right? Like you can't really screw it up too much if you set your parameters in the right way. And, you know, as someone who several years ago dipped the toe in the programmatic water, one of the things that I found was, and I think Iain, you touched on it briefly, is it isn't just about cost. So there's the actual cost of how much did it cost me for posting with X company versus how much did I bid for the right amount of clicks, right? Like there's that cost, but then there's the other cost for talent acquisition organizations that I often think they overlook. And that is, you can actually shut down how many applications you get, right? Like once you reach X number of applications, you can shut it off. Well, that means that there's all those applications that you're paying staff, or maybe you're paying to do an assessment, or like there's all of those other add-on things on top that result from too many applicants as well as the problems that you have by not having enough, right? So it's like a double-edged sword. In some countries where the applicant flow, as you talked about, Iain, isn't coming through as sort of like the tidal wave that we would expect, it's maybe an opportunity to get more people into those buckets. And then Dan, for us in the US, it's likely an opportunity to shut it down a little bit. Am I on base there? I mean, can I get some head nods or some like thumbs up, thumbs down? Am I thinking about that correctly? Good. So I already said I'm bullish on programmatic, which is why I'm here and all of those things. So Iain, if I were to sit back and to look at like what does Adzuna do that's differentiated besides all of the awesome information and great insights you have just because of the depth and breadth of your network, right? Like I'm a blog reader and a blog writer, Iain, and I have to tell you, you got 2 thumbs up for me on the Adzuna blog. Like I cannot say again to all of my TA brethren, like you must make this a must read. But besides that, is there anything that you would like for our viewers to sort of know about your industry and Adzuna particularly and how you stack up in your space?
Sure. I mean, first of all, thank you very much for the kind words. We obviously you've kind of alluded to one of the sort of the main, I guess our main selling point is our breadth of data and our breadth of information about stuff. So we pride ourselves on giving a kind of clear view on the market and seeing and allowing people to kind of zero in on the right candidate by providing them with all this kind of data and insights and all these things. We try to do that for the job seeker, and we also try to do that for the candidate. So we've come up with all these different tools and techniques, including things what we call in the UK ValueMyCV, and in the US ValueMyResume, which are these interesting, cool tools where candidates can upload their CV or resume, and then our AI tool kind of matches them to different jobs and tells them what they're worth and what their kind of career path could look like. So the idea is that we're really trying to improve the quality of the candidate experience and ultimately improve the quality of the employer experience, because if better quality candidates are coming to our site and applying for jobs through us, then that's good for everyone. And it's good for the candidate as well, and it means that they're better informed and they're hopefully applying for the kind of job that they really want. So it means that bit of a better candidate for you ultimately. So that's it in a nutshell, really.
I love that spin though, right? So the Talent Board is an organization worldwide that benchmarks candidate experience, and I sit on their candy bar. And one of the things that is that's always talked about is the impression of helping people find jobs, right? Like sometimes that's a real thing, and sometimes that's just sort of like marketing speak. And again, I think that that's another reason why Joveo and Adzuna make a perfect partnership, right? Joveo, a job for everyone, and then just as you talk about that, it totally hits to the same sort of pressers. Dan, same question to you. Like, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you think that viewers would really want to know about this space and what's going on here?
Sure. And I think, I'd like to talk about our relationship with Adzuna as well here, right? So I think that the bells and whistles are cool, but as the person that's tasked with fulfilling budgets of the kind of company demand, what I like about Adzuna is, they've been around for a long time, so they have a lot of data, which means that they can make smart decisions on their side, who they serve what jobs to what job seekers, right? And so we've seen them become a very strong source for us in the US. And in the UK and across Europe, there's just, it's a less concentrated space, right? There's fewer strong players that have good results, that also have good scale. And we've seen Adzuna kind of fit the bill for all of that. So we've been really partnering with Adzuna pretty closely across all markets that they perform in.
That's awesome. I love when good partners be made, right? So thank you for that. So we're about at time. I wanted to just recap some of my big takeaways from the conversation. First and foremost, read the Adzuna blog. If you don't, you're missing out. Second is just the whole theory of programmatic advertising and really strong networks. It saves you money, time, improves your quality, And I love the tie-in here, Iain, to candidate experience. So thank you for that. I think that that's a great deal. And I just want to tell you both, I appreciate the conversation, the time today. Iain, it was a pleasure meeting you. You are so incredibly smart, and I love everything about the partnership here. We appreciate you and are glad that you took time to talk with us today. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.